Hello everyone, you're very welcome to another session here at this year's Grad Ireland Graduate Careers Fair at the Grad Ireland Talk stage. I expected this to be one of the more popular ones, and so it's proven to be. This talk's going to be all about graduate programs, how to prepare, and the guys on stage today are going to give you some tips hopefully as well that you can use before you apply for your graduate program. So on this session with me today I have Shauna Coyle, Global Early Careers Lead at Kerry. I also have Hannah Murray, Early Talent Lead at Accenture, and Matthew Erskine from Optum. So guys, just a reminder before I forget as well, because I forgot for the last time, we will hopefully have time at the end to put questions to the guys. So if you go to slido.com, slido.com, and put in the code 3684, you'll be able to ask questions that pop up on my phone, and time permitting, I'll put as many as I can to the guys at the end. So we'll kick off with you, Shauna, if that's okay. First,
no worries.
You sitting close to me makes it a bit easier.
Yeah, no problem.
So look, graduate program is a term that maybe we all sit up here, we know all about it, know what it entails, but obviously there are more options out there for people. There's, immediate start jobs where you can leave college and go into role maybe straight away. What are the main differences between a graduate program, an immediate start role, and maybe what are the benefits of the graduate program as well?
Okay, sure. So for me, and again, others feel free to chime in, but for me, the primary difference between a graduate program and just taking on a permanent role straight from university is really the development aspect. So the employer invests a huge amount in the development of their graduates. So certainly at Kerry, our development program is a 2-year journey. And during that 2 years, of course, you're fulfilling a role, a day job, but you're also getting a ton of what I would describe as skills development. So focusing on things like communication skills, presentation skills, strategic thinking, problem solving, all of the toolkit that you would need to potentially be a leader in the future, because we very much treat our graduate talent as our future leaders. So that development piece is huge and sits alongside the day job. Whereas if you go into a role straight from graduation, you get subsumed, I suppose, by the role, but you get a huge amount of learning there too. You learn on the job. You learn the technical skills of the role. And you might do that role for a couple of years and then move on to the next role. You learn what it's all about. What I would say is the complementary skills, all those things that I mentioned there, maybe take a little bit longer to acquire. Whereas in a graduate program, you're kind of hothoused and you're essentially forced to focus on those things off the bat. But that's not to say that a graduate program is for everybody. It's definitely not the be-all and end-all, I would say. Maybe 10% of our leadership population at Kerry came through a grad program. Everybody else came through a different route. I wasn't on a graduate program myself. What was the second part of your question, Piers? Sorry.
No, you kind of answered everything in one there.
Did I? Okay.
Which is good, which is all right. I'm going to come on in the kind of next question to talk about maybe other options for someone who maybe doesn't want to do a graduate program or feels like it's not for them, which is absolutely fair enough. But Hannah, do you have anything to add to what Shauna said there in terms of the benefits or the differences between the two?
I guess for us as well, it's about the community that a graduate receives, right? So the mentorship and support can be very different for a graduate when they come to, particularly to Accenture, but to a lot of the offerings that are here today, you get a lot more support. We don't expect you to be a student one day and launching this big career the next. You are on a journey, and that journey, along with the development, comes with that sense of community and your support, your buddy, your hiring manager, anyone that's there to help you perform and help you reach goals, because I'm sure everyone in this room will have goals that they want to get through. You'll have, your top 3 achievements that you want to achieve for yourself coming out of college. Hopefully one isn't trying to get an apartment at the moment, but beyond that, it's really about you focusing in and being part of that community, because you're going to help each other as well, right? So that's a big differentiator for us.
Yeah, no, again, really good answer. And Matthew, did anything that the girls maybe haven't covered that you think?
I think we spoke about the mentorship and the it could be either career mentors or technical mentors for most businesses. I think the community of your fellow graduates is also really important to call out. You're joining as a group rather than an individual, and so that it's nervous, right? You're going into your very first job, but you're going in as a collective. You're going to have some activities. You're going to get to know people as friends pretty quickly because you're learning together. So that takes away a little bit of the big jump that going into your first job can be at times. So I didn't have that when I joined, but I wish I did in some ways.
Yeah, no, I think just the three answers combined give a really good overview of maybe what a program is and the benefits of doing one, as opposed to, like I said, that just immediate start, which can be tempting for some people. And as we said at the start, look, graduate program might not be for everybody. It might be for the majority of people here, but there could be people sitting out listening to this or watching on YouTube after who's thinking, oh, my friends are doing grad programs, my family keep telling me it's the route to go down, but I just don't think it's for me. It's not really something that appeals to me. Or maybe sticking with you, Matthew, what advice would you have for them, and what options are there for people who maybe are thinking along those lines?
It's down to the individual. I mean, it's very hard to give guidance. I mean, we just laid out some of the real strengths from a program like this. You know, mentorship. There's typically like a schedule of events, including training, mentoring, over the course of either 12 months or 18 months, depending on what company you're going for. But sometimes there's just that role out there. You just go, this is the time to go for it. You know, it's kind of down to the individual. You have to think about yourself. The other thing is, another general point is, you have to think this is a long career, right? A choice that you make right now. It seems like a big idea, but you can change your mind a year in, 2 years, and I think everybody on the stage has probably done multiple roles. So don't stress too much about it. You can pivot, right? You can 12 months in, 18 months in, you can just say, and you can still apply for some sort of support programs within the company you've joined as well. So go with your guts. Take the advice, go with your guts, see what you feel like, and take it from there.
Oh yeah, that is really good
Can I
advice.
just add to that for a second, Piers?
Yeah,
so
of course.
Just in terms of the development piece, which I spoke about earlier, which you get loads of on a graduate program. If you don't go down the route of a graduate program, just take the time to focus on your development, prioritize it, and make sure, therefore, that you are keeping pace with those who are on a graduate program. You'll get to the same point, just through a slightly different route. So I'd encourage you to very much focus. Put your hands up for stretch opportunities in your role, sign up for training courses, whatever might be available to you.
Yeah, because I think it came up actually in the last discussion, one of the most difficult thing maybe for people in university or college and graduating is trying to make a decision on a career straight away. Whereas, you know, maybe sometimes if you don't know what you do, take your time to figure out what you want to do, who you are as a person. Maybe before you apply for something, maybe you get stuck then and you kind of pitch and told a little bit in your career. Sometimes it's worth just taking that little break, taking a step back, and maybe figuring out what it is you actually want to do. And do you have anything to add to what the guys have said? Or
I just think a lot of the hires that we've made in recent time, look, we've come through a couple of years that have been very different. You've studied very differently. You've achieved very differently. If you need to take time out, as we've all said, take time out for extra study. Maybe you have a bit of a travel itch now because you haven't been able to do a J1 or whatever it is. That's not going to go against you in an application. And although we're all here as employers today wanting everyone to apply, take your time. If you need to take time this year, take it. That's not going to go against you in an application down the line. So really build yourself up first. So if you're worried about a graduate program, or you're worried about maybe even meeting big cohorts of people again, take your time, because everyone's in the same boat and it doesn't go against you in an application.
yeah, perfect. Hopefully we put some people at ease who might have been thinking, oh God, I'm being pressured in to do this. And look, every application process for each graduate program is slightly different, and you know, certain skills maybe some employers look for that others don't. But sticking with yourself, Hannah, in general, how many stages maybe do you think are there in a graduate program application process, especially with Accenture? And what are some of the most common stages that come up?
So for us, our graduate process is 4 stages. It's our application process, which actually doesn't need a CV, right? But it would help if you had one to prep. You're going to build something that looks like a LinkedIn profile, skill-based, skill-orientated. Phase 2 is your online assessment. You'll be provided a link and you have plenty of time to complete that online assessment in your own time. So whether you're in week 2 or 3 in your semester, take your time, get your assignments done first, and then loop back to us when you're doing your online assessment. There's no time limit. Stage 3 is our online assessment. You probably know from years before, we used to have our VR headsets and we'd be navigating gamification. We do all of that online now. So you will be invited to a Zoom link for a morning or an afternoon when it suits your schedule to navigate that gamification piece, your online collaboration piece, and your interview. And then in the final round, you'll meet some of our senior team, whether it be a senior manager all the way up to managing director, for your final round interview, where you will present on a topic that we give you so that you have something valid to share and it's not just a one-on-one Q&A. So that's us. It sounds long-winded. Sometimes people are like, why is your application process so long? I promise you it's not. And it's to verify that you have the strengths and the skills that you tell us you have. We're looking for you to show them rather than tell us. And that's why our process is the way it is. And it's gamified, so some of it actually is a bit of crack. So apply and see.
All sounds very, very good. I'm tempted now myself. Might be a bit old at this point. And Shauna, what about the kind of graduate application process for Kerry? What does that look like and kind of what stages are involved?
Yeah, so it's broadly similar. We've got a 4-stage process. The first is you complete an application form through our website. The second is you complete some online psychometrics, so personality surveys. Primarily for some roles, you may be asked to complete a logical reasoning, verbal reasoning, and numerical reasoning assessment. And then third stage is a video interview, and then final stage is an assessment centre, which consists of a group problem-solving exercise, delivery of a presentation, and a final formal competency-based interview.
Okay, perfect. And
Also
Matthew,
long.
what about the process at Optum?
Yeah, we changed it over year on year. For this intake process, the initial application screening at that point, then there's a sort of a telephone interview from our human capital partners, and then a technical interview. And that technical interview is usually 50-50. So normally interviews in the past would have been at the very end, have you got any questions? So we've flipped that round right now, and so half the interview is actually about the candidate, because we tend to be interviewed a lot rather than us interviewing them. So we've actually formalised that. We give you a lot of time in advance to prepare for interviewing us, because it has to be a right match for you as well as for us.
Yeah, I think in general what you find, and it might be a bit of a cliche, but cliches are generally true, is that companies hire people as opposed to maybe certain skill sets, because you can train someone to a certain standard where it is about how you could fit in for the culture of the company, the people who are already there.
Yeah.
I think everyone's mentioned and touched on like the assessment centre and the video interview process, and maybe throw it to you, Shauna. Obviously, for obvious reasons, kind of hybrid, I refuse to say the word, but for hybrid has been commonplace now for the last couple of years. In terms of the application process, maybe when it comes to assessment centres and interviews, is that here to stay as far as maybe Kerry or employers are concerned, or do you think it's going to go all back to maybe the in-person interviews?
No, it's here to stay for sure. So most of our assessment process is still virtual. In fact, all of our assessment centres for the remainder of this year will be virtual. We may move back to a hybrid, but at the moment we're completely virtual, yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think it was an obvious answer, but I'd like to give people that kind of clarity as well, so they kind of know what to
Yeah, and you know
prepare for.
what? It mirrors the working world then, because when you come to work for us, we very much work a hybrid model. So a couple of days a week in the office and a couple of days from home. That's the new norm. I don't think anybody's going to say anything different. I would be surprised.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can see the guys nodding along there, so I'm assuming it's the same for both of you guys as well. And Hannah, is there one skill that comes up maybe every year over the last few years that you could advise people here that you need to work on now? Maybe there's one that comes up at the time where people are weak on, or it's one maybe they need to work on a little bit. So if there was one skill you had to advise people here today now to work on, what would that be?
So if we look at it generically, and when people are asking us at the stand, there's quite a few skills that you'd have to put together to be successful as a graduate, right? But under performance in an interview setting, maybe some of you are going into your first interview process, you're shy, you're unsettled. It's not about you coming across as the slickest person ever. We know that you're graduates and we know that you're just starting out in the interviews. It's probably about being your authentic self as much as you can. And you're probably saying to me, well, how will you know if I'm authentic or not? We will, because we'll see someone who's continuously contributing to collective work in the assessment centre. We'll see someone who's bringing new questions to our interview panels, and we'll see someone who's actually doing a bit of prep and research to be here and to be part of whether it's assessment centre or interview. So that kind of authentic piece to me is a skill. It's a skill to be yourself in an interview, and take from that what you want, but I would say bring that to the interviews. Don't try and be something that your friend told you to be to get into Kerry or Accenture or anyone out there. So I'd say just be yourself.
Yeah, it is a really good answer. Maybe something that some people struggle with is kind of to be yourself, because that's who you're going to be when you join the company as well. So it's hard to kind of hide that through the interview process. Matthew, what about from your perspective? If someone's going through the hiring process for Optum and going through the graduate program application process, what's one skill that would help them to stand out, do you think, from everyone else?
In terms of the interview itself, I just say preparedness, right? So just know have done your homework. I would avoid getting focused on the technicalities of the role, and actually look at where the work has been applied, and have your questions well prepped around where the work has actually been applied, rather than that. Even though I certainly coming from a techie background, so you can get caught up. The tech will change, right? But doesn't change is where the work's actually been applied in the real world. So having that empathy for where the products are actually being used, who the clients are, and that if I had a candidate coming to an interview who actually knew that piece and had done some work around that would be really impressive. That would get my attention. When it comes to, if we can just take it forward a wee bit, when it comes to the skill that we would see that we'd like people to focus in on as they start their role. For us, that would be being able to give and receive feedback. I think people really struggle with that. They're coming from academia where it's typically been one way, and you might meet your lecturer, maybe if you're lucky every month or maybe quarterly, and so being able to actually get feedback and be able to take it on board. It's not a criticism. It's actually just you need to work and focus on certain areas. But vice versa, you're coming with ideas. You're coming with new techniques, and be able to tell your manager or talk to your supervisor around. Can you try something new? I thought about a new idea. That is a skill in itself. I'd ask people to think about that. It's something very difficult to practice, but you can actually think approaches to take with that.
That's really, really good advice. Actually, an interesting one that we haven't heard too much before. And Shauna, from your perspective, I know Kerry have multiple streams that you hire from and look for. Is there one skill that kind of you look for in each of them across all of the streams that will help people stand out a bit?
Sorry, say that again, Pierce. Is there one skill that...
So obviously you guys hire from multiple streams.
Yeah.
But is there one skill that kind of encompasses all of them that you'd look out for, and it's a good trait for a graduate to have that might help them stand out through the process?
Yeah, well, in fact, most of what we hire for is common across our programs. So we don't hire so much based on your technical knowledge and your academic qualifications. We really focus on the softer skills. So I think graduate programs have always looked for problem-solving abilities, communication skills, collaboration skills, but I think the skills now that have really come to the fore in the last couple of years, which we're really honing in on, is what I would call emotional intelligence. I think it kind of wraps up what both of the guys talked about. So giving and receiving feedback, knowing your authentic self, just being aware of your own strengths and limitations, how you present, the impact you have on others. That's what I mean by emotional intelligence. It's super important in every role in our organisation. We certainly look for it in grads. And the other thing is agility. We're constantly changing and shifting, and I think every organisation is nowadays. We've been forced into that. And I think the ability to move and kind of redefine yourself fairly regularly is something that we look for. And that requires an open-mindedness and a willingness to flex and adapt.
Yeah, again, really good advice. Hope everyone's taking notes, because there's some good stuff that we're getting up here as well. And then, look, there's obviously loads of graduate programs out there, and so many people will apply for different programs, but there's a limited number of spots for everybody. You'll always get more applications than you need for the amount of hires you make. But Hannah, do you have any advice for someone who maybe is disappointed? They get maybe far down the line and they're unsuccessful. And look, obviously, there could be 50 candidates and all 50 could be great for the job, and you have to pick 5. But for obviously those 45 people, what advice would you have for them maybe to how to deal with rejection?
So, very similar to what you've been saying about taking feedback in the workplace, taking in the feedback you get from a rejection. So if you get to an assessment centre, an interview, and someone has rang you or sent you an email around your feedback that you've been unsuccessful, the first thing I do as a human being is I go, I have haven't got the job. And then I don't hear anything else. I don't read anything else. It's that, it's the impact. You've applied somewhere you really want to be and you haven't got it. None of us listen after that point, right? So sometimes you have to take the rejection, wait a day or two, proceed, read that email or ring them back. They always offer, look, if you want to talk about the feedback at a later time, just digest that news first, because you're never going to listen to them after the point you get rejected, and listen to the feedback. We're hiring graduates all the time. We've done it for quite some time now, and we're giving you feedback not just because we're rejecting you, but because we want to help you get a role, whether it be with us the following year, the following campaign, or with anybody here in the RDS today. We're giving you feedback that's supposed to help you, and whether it might not seem like that all the time, we are here to support you. We have hiring to do, but as students, we're here to support you as much as you can. So if you want feedback and you need support, it's that avenue that you have to take. But I promise you now, when you all of us is going to get a rejection at some point. You will not listen after you've been told you've been unsuccessful or unfortunately you've been rejected. So take a minute, and that minute could be 1 or 2 days, and then revisit that conversation.
Yeah, no, that's great. And as you said, anyone, no matter what career they're in, there's no one out there who hasn't been rejected for a role they've gone for in the past before. Everyone has to deal with it. It's very easy for people to sit up maybe even here or anywhere else and talk about a career because obviously they've gotten to the end goal, but there's a lot that goes in behind the scenes to get to that point, and rejection is part of that. So, Matthew, would you have any advice maybe on top of what Hannah said in terms of someone who's got really far down the process and they're unsuccessful and they're a bit downtrodden and thinking, well, what's the point of applying for another one? As Hannah said, you'll get feedback and that'll help you, when you go to apply again. But do you have any other advice?
I think it's very similar. There's always something to learn from the process. You're always going to pick up something. If you've done your preparation, you've done your research on the company, you've looked at maybe their job postings. So that's, again, one piece of advice I give folks if you're looking at a early careers program. Look at actually the job postings they have for full-time roles right now, because that's the roles you'll actually be moving to in 2 or 3 years' time. That'll give you a feel for what the work is really about. So that prep is not going to do you harm. If you do, unfortunately, are not picked up as part of this intake, it'll help you next time round, or it'll help you with another employer. It'll always be a benefit.
Shauna, anything to add to that?
Not particularly. I think, to echo those points, and the point I made at the very outset, the graduate development program is only, a very small proportion of the roles that we have to offer. So you didn't get into the program, that's okay. Look at what other roles and opportunities we have available. And then, as I said, once you get into those, just prioritize your development so that you are kind of keeping track and you're fast tracking your careers in the same way that we do for our grads.
Perfect. And look, the outcome for 99% of people here today is probably to get on a graduate program and be successful. That's why they're here. So if you had to give people one piece of advice, I know we've talked about maybe skills they can work on, but if you had to distill it to one piece of advice to get the people in the room here today, what would it be? Shauna, maybe start with you.
To get onto the graduate program?
Yeah.
I would say start thinking now about the application process that potentially lies ahead. Start being mindful of your everyday experiences, the types of things you're getting exposure to, because once you get to an assessment process, the interview stage or the assessment centre stage will ask you all of those competency-based questions. Give me an example of a time when you demonstrated leadership skills, or give me an example of a time when you worked collaboratively with others, or when you had a disappointment, how did you pick yourself up? Those sorts of things, if you're trying to think of all of those examples a few days or a week in advance of an interview, they will not come to mind easily. You need to be reflecting now on the experiences that you're gaining and go, oh yeah, that was an interesting project actually that I did at college, or that was whatever you did in your hobbies, or something from your family. Just be mindful of these things and jot them down, because they could make for very good fodder when you get into an application process. And the other thing is start working on that feedback, self-awareness, self-development piece. So start kind of, assessing your strengths and limitations, and ask for feedback at every given opportunity, and give feedback as well. I loved that.
Perfect. Hannah, what about you? Anything to add to that? Or maybe even if there was a piece of advice you wish you had gotten, particularly at the start of your career, that you could share with people now, what would it be?
I guess there's a lot of things like whizzing through my head now that I could be like, do all of this and you'll all get grad programs. That's not necessarily the case, but it's while applying, we are also trying to hire you, and it's a two-way street, particularly in the market now. 10 years ago, when I was a student walking around the RDS, there wasn't half of the programs there are now, and although it's still competitive, there has to be something in it for you too. It's a two-way street. So you touched on this earlier, it's about asking those questions back. Well, ask those questions the whole way through. What is in it for you to join that graduate program? And does it suit you? Or are you just applying because you're going to apply to a certain collection of companies, and you're like, well, that's my 10 I'm applying to, and that's it. Only apply with intent and only interview with purpose. And that's probably my best advice.
Perfect. And Matthew, I'll throw it to you to round it off in terms of the advice for people here today.
I think prep. So back to my earlier point. So do your homework, right? Know where the products or services are actually being applied. What does it mean to be a customer of that company? Obviously, you don't want to take it too far and spend too long doing that, but just actually think about where the products are being used. Bring that back then, because you can apply that as you're thinking about your projects that you've done maybe at college. Link them up. See, is there a link between them, so you can talk about that in the interview. Because your interviewers will certainly get the connection, so you try to make those connections in advance. Second thing would be confident, right? You've done your education. You are the person you are. Go for it, right? Just we're not hiring you for your technical skills alone. It's you as a person. So be confident that you have what it takes to be successful. And again, the last thing I'd say is this is the start of your career. You'll change. Don't get caught up in, oh my God, this is the biggest thing ever. If I may make a mistake by choosing the wrong career, company, whatever it might be. Just go into it and just go like, I'm going to try this out. Like you did when you started off college, or you had to make a choice. Lots of people change after 2-3 years. You can do the same thing. So don't stress too much over it.
Yeah, Bert, thanks. Really good advice to round it off. We did have time for a couple of minutes of questions, but you've actually answered them all over the course as it went, so I've been going through them. So as we have a couple of minutes, maybe give this opportunity for you guys to, if your graduate program is live now, maybe tell us where people can go to apply, when the closing date is, or we listen live at the moment when it is going to go live. So maybe Shauna, will start with yourself.
Sure. So our graduate roles for 2023 are live now, and you can go to kerry.com/careers. There are 59 positions available across Europe for September 2023. And the application process will remain open until the end of the calendar year, but I would say get your applications in early, because we may fill the positions. If we get enough high quality applicants now, we'll start running assessment centres probably around November time, and if we fill the positions, then we fill the positions, they're gone, and we will close. If not, then it'll remain open till 31st of December.
So our applications are open now. Assessment centres are actually starting next week for people who have gone and started to apply to us from the 1st of September. They intend to close by mid-October, but again, once assessment centres are full across October and November, our applications will close across our 5 offerings in cybersecurity, software engineering, analytics, consulting, and business and tech integration. Big thing for us this year is that we've got a lot of new exciting clients, and we're really looking for STEM talent. So this is where I've been told to shout out for my STEM talent, and that we hope that you apply and consider us as well when you're considering everyone else out there.
Again, applications are open right now. We're on stand 26. There's a QR code. You scan that and that'll bring you to the website for the applications. I think the applications won't be closing until sort of end of November time period. Similar profile to my neighbour here. So data analytics, AI, a huge focus on AI engineers, cybersecurity, and some product folks as well. We've been small intake in January, intake in July, and intake in September of next year in both Dublin and in Donegal as well.
Perfect. As mentioned, you got the stand number in there. I think better give you guys the opportunity as well. So, Shauna, what stand number are you got here today?
Stand number 15, just through here.
And Hannah?
47.
Well remembered. But look, that's all the time we have here for today. Remind as well, I'd be fired if I didn't say that all the roles the guys talk about today were on Grad Ireland as well as the guys' careers page. So you can obviously apply through there as well. But look, that's it for today. So thanks so much, guys, for your time. We really do appreciate it. There's another session kicking off here at 3:00 about how to make your mark in the creative industry. So I'll see you all then. See you all here for that. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, guys.